Hello everyone. Today I will be explaining the rules of the game Alhambra. In this game, players will score points by buying buildings and adding them to their Alhambra and having majorities in the different types of buildings, and also for having the longest wall on the outer edge of their Alhambra. At the end of the game, the player who has advanced the furthest along the scoring track will be the winner. Here are the basic components for the game. We have the scoring track here. This is the building market. These are reserve tile boards, and there's one for each player. This is a starter fountain token, or tile, and there's also one of those for each player. And we have the player markers. We also have buildings in 6 different types. So white, red, blue, brown, green, and purple. And we also have currency cards in a variety of different currencies. There's green, orange, blue, gold, and the currencies are also labeled here at the top. And we also have 2 scoring cards. To set up the game, each player will take one of the reserve tile boards. They'll also take one of the fountain tokens here, and they'll take 2 player markers. One of them goes at the start of the scoring track, and the other one is just to identify who the player is. Then each player will get a starting hand of currency cards, and this is done by randomly dealing face-up cards until the total amount is 20 or more. We have 15, 20. So we would stop at 20, and this would be one player's starting hand. And each player would get their starting hand in the same way. The player who has the fewest cards in their starting hand will be the start player. Before starting the game, you will have to take 4 tiles at random from the bag and place them in each of the 4 designated slots in the tile market board. Then you will take the remaining currency cards and separate them into 5 roughly equal stacks. Like I'm doing here. You will then look for the scoring card here that has a little 1 on it. That's the first round scoring card, and that will go somewhere in the second stack. And then you look for the scoring card that has a 2 on it, and that one will go somewhere in the 4th stack. Then you collect the stacks in order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this will be the draw deck for the remainder of the game. And you will take the top 4 cards from the draw deck, and these will be the face-up cards available for the first round of the game. On a player's turn, he can choose to take one of 3 actions. The 3 actions are to take currency cards, buy a tile from the market, or to redesign their Alhambra. And I'll go over each of these actions in detail. For the first action, a player may take currency. I'll put some good example cards out here. A player may take 1 single card, or they can take any number of cards so long as the total is 5 or less. So in my turn, for example, I could take this 9, or I could take the 3 and both of the 1s. Or if I really wanted to, just the 3 and the 1, or just any other single card I wanted to. there is no hand limit. The second action a player may take is to purchase tiles from the market. A player may not make change when buying tiles from the market, so there are many times when you'll have to end up overpaying for a tile. The cost of a tile is shown here in the lower right hand corner. And to purchase a tile, a player must pay with cards only of the corresponding currency type. If a player can buy a tile with exact change, then the player can get an additional action on their turn. That action could be to take currency, or to redesign the Alhambra, or buy another tile. If the player can play exact change again, they get an extra action again. So it is actually possible for a player to buy all 4 tiles on the market, and then have one extra action to either take currency or redesign their Alhambra. Tiles are replenished only at the end of the player's turn, and same with any money that the player takes, they're replenished at the end of the player's turn. When a player buys a tile from the market, it does not immediately get added to their Alhambra. Once they have completed all their actions for the turn, then the player may add their tiles to their Alhambra in any order that they want. I will now explain the rules for placing tiles onto the Alhambra. The Alhambra starts with the fountain tile. It's not very clear, but if you can see, there's a small fountain there that indicates which direction is up. The tile has to be oriented towards the player, and all tiles placed onto the Alhambra must be oriented correctly with the fountain. So you can't play upside down tiles like that. There are a few rules to keep in mind when adding tiles to the Alhambra. The first rule is the orientation I just mentioned. The next one is described in the rules as basically being able to reach any tile you place onto the Alhambra on foot. So it essentially just means that there has to be a connected path of orthogonally adjacent tiles that lets you go from the fountain to any tile that you add. The next rule is that like edges must go together. So you will notice that some of the tiles have walled edges, and there can be more than one edge with a wall. So when you're placing tiles, you have to make sure that you are placing the tiles in such a way that non-walled edges go together, and that all the walled edges go together. In this example here, this is a perfectly legitimate placement. You have a walled edge matching with another walled edge that creates an internal wall. And that's perfectly fine as long as there is a path to all the tiles from the fountain. So I could, if this was the placement, I could add this tile here, and that's fine because there's a path here, and this internal wall is not a problem at all. The final rule about adding tiles to the Alhambra is that tiles cannot be placed in such a way that they would create a gap. So I will show a quick example of that here. So right now this is a perfectly legitimate placement. There's a path to all the tiles, all of the edges are matched correctly. I could not place this tile here. Even though it fits all the other rules, it would create this empty space that's completely closed off in the middle of the Alhambra, and that's not allowed. So you can't create gaps like that. So now that I've gone over the tile placement, I will explain the third action the player can take in their turn, which is to redesign their Alhambra. As I mentioned before, when a player buys a tile from the market, it does not immediately get added to the Alhambra. The player may choose to, or the player keeps the tiles until the end of their turn, and then they may choose to add them to the Alhambra in any order they wish, or they can put them into the reserve tile board. You are not limited by the size of the reserve tile board. You can have any number of tiles in here, and there is no penalty at the end of the game for having tiles left over here. But they do not count towards scoring unless the tiles are actually in the Alhambra. So if a player chooses to redesign their Alhambra, they have 3 options to choose from. The player may add a tile to the Alhambra, so they would take a tile from the reserve board and add it somewhere onto the Alhambra, subject to the standard placement rules. They can also choose to remove a tile from the Alhambra and place it onto their reserve tile. Note that if you choose to remove a tile, you have to make sure that you still preserve all of the tile placement rules. So for example, I could not remove this tile because it basically leaves this tile here with no direct connection to the fountain. That's not allowed. The third option that the player can choose is to swap tiles. And swapping tiles basically means that you may choose to remove a tile from the Alhambra and then take a tile that is on your reserve board and place it in the exact same spot where the tile you removed was. If you do this, you can actually remove a tile that creates a rule violation temporarily as long as you replace it with another legitimate tile afterwards. So again, the 3 options: add a tile from the board, from the reserve to the Alhambra, remove a tile from the Alhambra, put it on the board, or swap tiles in the exact same location. You may only choose one of these 3 options when you choose the redesign your Alhambra action for your turn. So to summarize, the 3 actions a player may take in their turn is to take currency, buy a tile from the market, or redesign the Alhambra. Now I will move on to scoring. As play proceeds, the start player going clockwise, eventually you will start going through the deck, and at some point the first scoring card is going to come up. It's not very clear here, but there's also references for this on the reserve board up here. But when the scoring card comes up, it'll be at the end of a player's turn when you're replenishing currency cards. The game pauses immediately, and you count who has the majority of buildings in each of the 6 colors, and you score points accordingly. So you would get 1 point for blue, 2 points for red, 3 points for brown, and so on. After you have scored buildings, then everybody looks at their Alhambras and finds the longest outer wall. So I'll create an example here. So in this Alhambra, we have 2 outer walls. There's one outer wall of 1 segment here, and there's another outer wall of 1, 2, 3 segments. These internal walls do not count for purposes of scoring the longest outer wall. So even if they're connected like this, you just count the ones that are on the outer edge of the Alhambra. So the longest outer wall would be here, 1, 2, 3. So the player would score 3 points in addition to whatever points they scored from building majorities. As the game continues, eventually the second scoring card was going to appear in the deck, and you basically repeat the same process. In the second scoring cards, you will have points for majority, and then also points for whoever has second most. And with this round, as well as the previous round and for final scoring, if there is a tie for majority, the points are added and shared amongst the tied players. So after the second scoring, the game will continue until all the building tiles have been drawn from the bag, and the game will end at the end of a player's turn when there are not enough tiles in the bag to completely replenish the tile market. When that happens, there will probably be one or two buildings remaining on the market. If that happens, all the players will add up all their currency cards in the appropriate currencies, and for each currency, the player that has the highest sum of the specific currency will get the building, and they will have the option to add it to their Alhambra before final scoring. If there is a tie for whoever has the highest amount in a particular currency, then nobody gets the building, and it just stays here in the market. So final scoring occurs the same way that the previous two scoring rounds worked, and there is a reference for the final scoring points here on the reserve card. So after final scoring, you score majorities as usual. There are points for third most in the final round, and you add up points for the longest wall as with the other two scoring rounds, and that's basically the end of the game. So at that point, whoever is furthest in the scoring track is the winner. If there is a tie, then the rules say it is a shared victory, so congratulations to all the tied players. And that's basically the game. It's a lot of fun. I recommend it. It's good for when you have a larger group. It'll play up to 6 players. So I hope this video has been helpful, and hope you give the game a try. Thank you for watching.